Hi, everyone. I'm David,
And I'm Richard.
and we have another short 15-minute update on everything that's happening. We're going to talk about NFTs today, update you on what's happened, what's happening. But
Yep.
before we do that, Richard, maybe we should talk a bit about the other stuff that's happening at the same time.
Yep. So we've got ongoing UI work with poker,
Mhm.
refining that, talking to some serious players, and finding out what they need and want from the UI, etc. As well as refining the edges of joining and leaving open tables with crypto, etc.
Yeah.
Um, to that end as well, if people want to get involved in poker nights, hit us up on Red Square. It'd be really helpful if you could let us know when you'd be keen to play,
Yeah.
because we can have more than one. We could do different time zones for Europe or US or whatever.
Hmm.
If we're getting feedback from people, hey, look, I'd be really keen and I could bring a few people at this time, that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
So
Also,
do
like,
let us know.
when things go bad, let us, in enough
Mm,
detail that we can figure out how to fix it. And we can get, if you're having group games, we can actually get someone into the game too, uh,
yeah.
to help
It,
us
it,
figure out if there are problems.
yeah,
So,
it's not stuff like that's going wrong or whatever. It's usually things like the game can't proceed if people leave and re-enter in
yeah.
certain situations and stuff. So
If,
we're trying to nail that down.
if you guys are card sharks and you need us to show up with some Ethereum or
If
ETH,
we are your exit liquidity,
that's actually okay. We don't mind it. Uh,
yeah, that's all right.
Two, video call stability. We've been doing some work. We got some feedback. I don't remember who it was. It wasn't Patrick. Uh,
No, Alex, I think.
Alex. Okay. Thank you,
Yeah,
Alex. You'll see some improvements. If things are still breaking with video call for you, especially if you can figure out a way to consistently do it, let us know. Um, I'm noticing the
yeah,
improvement in quality already. So,
yeah. Because it's peer to peer, there's issues sometimes. I think with VPNs and things. If you have a problem, let us know, and we can try and
yeah, I
capture
mean,
what's going on.
yeah, it's also small stuff like there are some situations when you're behind a corporate firewall that legitimately sucks. But in this
Yeah,
situation, does it tell you you're behind a really bad firewall? It's not our fault. It's not your fault
yeah,
either. But we can blame the company. We can blame the hotel. Making sure people know what's happening or they've got
yeah.
to click to retry.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
we're doing some work on networking on the Rust side. You'll see those commits going too. Richard, you want
Yeah.
to briefly?
Just quickly, we're putting in kind of admin tools that we'll need to have if we've got third-party nodes running on the network, and you're trying to coordinate people being on the same version, or if someone's misconfigured and they're causing an issue, that you could work out how to get them a message and tell them that sort of
Yeah.
thing. So it's sort of base level, just admin stuff for that, but you'll see commits coming through around peer lists and things being available to nodes. So,
So let's talk about NFTs. I'm going to get
yep,
started with this. If you've
yep,
been tracking GitHub, you're going to have seen a lot of changes going in the last week. On the JS side, the UI UX, I think it's getting merged into staging today. Staging's on the staging server. So you'll start to see the UI on prod. It might work, it might not work, but it's going to be visible.
yep,
These are not only creating NFTs, we've had that UI for a while, but it's also now splitting them up and merging them back together. And so we've got a bunch of that as well as for sending them.
yep.
So you'll see this live on the server. There's also changes on the Rust side that are happening now, today and tomorrow, maybe Monday, Tuesday as well, that are going to be dealing with validation. We've already got the validation logic in for, you create an NFT and you send it. But this stuff is, oh, I want one transaction to create 100 NFTs so that I can distribute them to 100 of my friends. So
Yep.
that's the new stuff that's happening. Anything to add before we go on to the cool things about NFTs that are going to be new and interesting that you aren't going to get on Ethereum or EVM?
No, I think that's the really cool stuff. The only other thing to say is, yeah, this is also an instance of NFT creation will require Saito, so you'll start seeing the UI if you have Saito in your wallet. If
Yeah,
you don't have Saito in your wallet, get some so you can start playing with NFTs.
it's going to cost one Saito to create one NFT. It's actually, interestingly, it's not actually a fee. That's the deposit that we're just going to, to start. You're going to make that. It's going to be a deposit, so it goes with the NFT to make sure it stays looping around the chain for. a very long time. But so it's going to require on-chain Saito. If you've got on-chain Saito, congratulations. We've got the divide, merge, and send functionality. That's kind of a bit new and a bit interesting. We're designing it so that people don't need to pay attention to it. That's why we say things like, oh, there's a fee of one Saito to create it. The money's not actually going out of your wallet. It's basically locked with the NFT until it's destroyed or spent.
Yeah, it's
But
a lockup. Yeah.
but yeah, it's trying to make it really usable because we think normies, the non-Saisons who find out about us, they'll kind of be like, oh, okay, well, it just costs one Saito to make. That's reasonable. Uh,
Yeah, I think it's also just, I mean, we're trying to go well beyond the kind of ETH or other experiences where you're copying and pasting smart contracts
mm,
code that you may or may not trust into systems to send it online
yeah.
and pay gas. It's
Or
going to be in your wallet, mint an
yeah,
NFT, mint 500 NFTs if
yeah.
you want.
Or limited to like what Pump Fund supports or any of that stuff. There also, you'll see the drop down on the component lets you specify the type of NFT. So we're trying to pull attention to the fact that it's not the smart contract that determines it, it's the code that you put inside the transaction. So you can upload an image, file, text. We're planning to put some stuff in that will be code or game related
Yeah.
code as well. And I think, Richard, you pointed out that it could also just be money or tickets or.
Yeah. So that's the funny thing. We're calling them NFTs because the work that started all of this off was to add NFTs through the bound NFT functionality, the bound UTXO system we
Yeah.
developed. But it actually turns out because you could divide them, so you could create an NFT, which you can think of as all of the token, and then split it into the minimum amounts of that token and then send them around. It's also just fungible tokens.
I think that actually blew Khan's mind when I had to point that out for you. He was like,
Yeah.
he didn't realize. He's like, there's an amount, and he's like, oh yes, well that's the amount of Saito in the NFT, and I'm like, no, 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 no. The amount in the bound normal one is Saito.
Yeah.
The amount in the NFT is just
How
it's an
many of this do
amount
you
of
want?
your NFT, right? So
Yeah. So you can do anything from a classic NFT, i.e., here's an image or something that I want to be able to make unique and have on the
yeah,
system and buy and sell, etc., through to a totally fungible thing like they're tokens that are worth some value that you trade
yeah,
them for or use to purchase things with or whatever, through to weird, interesting combinations where they're kind of semi-fungible. So you could write code where you say, well, you have to have half of them to do something,
yeah.
or so you could use it for governance and things, but you could also just use them where you need a threshold to participate in something or claim a reward you need to have collected 10 of them
We
or
have
something.
we have no idea what's going to happen with this, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it's different. There's also we've got 16 bytes of space that we
Yep.
can use for stuff, and we don't yet know what to use it for. So we're probably going to make it open or versioning, or maybe you can tag it and you can say this is an image or this is for red screen
Yeah,
or this
the
is.
way we'd like to do is as an open protocol, something where you've got these IDs and they can be used for something, and people could, by consensus, start using them for a certain thing, and then people could build apps that understand if I see an NFT of this type, it's this thing.
We will mention though it's 16 bytes. So if you're a dev and you're like, I've got an idea, but it really requires that NFT to have 16 bytes. Uh, 16.3 bytes or something of information. Well,
Well, where are you guys?
hello, friend. So let's
Yeah.
let's move on. What are we planning to do with this? Well, we're planning to put together some demos at some point.
Yeah.
So if you have ideas, please let us know. It's going to be simple demos with some free NFTs so people can send them around. Maybe like different cards on poker, so the back of
Yeah.
the card is a different color.
Well, I think that gets back to what you're saying, where you could have code in there. So they could be cool things like skins that you can trade, etc., earn, buy in games, but they could also enhance games in the future. So you could actually have little bits of code in there that
You
in
will
the right
always be
game.
dealt pocket aces, the NFT set.
I mean, you could launch a version of poker where if you have the right NFTs, you could get a redeal or
I
some
mean, like
random
not not
thing if you
not in
wanted to.
our implementation, but you in another game.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we know of at least one use case where someone's thinking about doing something with ZK Snarks and NFTs too, which is kind of cool. Anyway, if you're interested in playing around, here's something you may not realize that's related to what we talked about last week. With the dynamically compiled modules, our apps are likely to support some basic functionality, like maybe we'll be able to get the profile avatars to be images, and have those be NFTs if they're in your wallet. If you want to do something funky or creative, though, you can always take one of the apps that we've built, one of the games. You can add some NFTs and you can distribute your version as a dynamically compiled module. What this means is that for having really powerful NFTs plus a Saito app, you can distribute the app and you can have the NFT and they can circulate separately. If you have NFT images, for instance, you can host them on your own site. And you can have the code do anything you want, regardless of whether we run it on our server, because people can now install your app into their browser and they've got full NFT support. Maybe someone will do something cool with video calls, like you need an NFT.
One of the things we talked about is vouchers, right? So you could have vouchers for like the classic one we always talk about because we've got experience is Chinese lessons or whatever, where you redeem. You can redeem.
Classic example from anybody who spent time in China is Chinese lessons.
Still struggles for their Chinese lessons. Yes.
Yeah, anyway, if you've got some creative ideas, the general takeaways, if you have ideas, let us know if there's something you want to do. We're kind of looking for them. Because some of them are going to be super simple to do. We wouldn't mind supporting them on our code. And we want to enable people who've got interesting ideas so that when people hear about NFTs and they come to Saito, they're like, wait a minute, this is actually much cooler than any of the stuff that's happening on Solana or Ethereum, those networks. So if you come up with a great example and we can help, we'd love to. Last but not least, maybe do we want to give people an update on Realms, Richard?
I think quickly, because it's sort of been it's always been a community project, and it's sort of been spinning its wheels a bit, waiting on this NFT stuff in some places, but really could do with some community love. If anyone's interested in thinking about things like the UI for that, we've got imagery that the community created that's really good. We've now got NFT support, but we really need to think through the gameplay aspects. How do you do this in the space that you have in a browser or on the phone, et cetera, et cetera?
I'm assuming that I'm going to need to be involved in coding because I know how to do what the engine needs to do, which is that the hard part is like interrupts. Someone plays a card and you've got the option to be like, no, my wicked damsel will cancel that or whatever. We know how to do that. And we know how to do it with like arbitrary number of events that interact. But yeah, we could use help with like the UI. So if you want to do some vibe coding and be like, hey, I want to play around with the card images and try to make the game look good, that would be super helpful.
It'd be really cool. Because I think it's really a matter of like, how do we make it fun and playable, and not like a library exercise. Where is that card that I need to play right now, and that sort of thing, which is a bit of a challenge with the complexity and the kind of intricacy of the game.
So I guess that's kind of what's happening. We're gonna try to keep this short. If you've watched, thank you. If we'll try to do this again, maybe next week or the week after.
I think we'll try and keep them in this format. We got great feedback last week for the length, and I think that's to definitely take that on board. It's good to be trying to keep these things short and sharp, so we'll do that, and then we'll try and keep them more regular, which helps people keep in better touch with what's going on, etc. So we'll probably wind this up now and try and get you out another one with some cool stuff in the game space next week.
Things are going fun next week. Let's talk. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.